And let me check, make sure we are actually live and can be heard. Let me refresh one more time. Oh, okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. Okay. Well, we are back. We are back. We are back. Or as Mace used to say, guess who's back? Guess who's back? Beth is back. Welcome back. Man, y'all, I want to thank everybody for joining us once again for another, I don't even know what to call it, live stream, um,
Yeah, we
show,
don't really
whatever.
have you don't have a show title. Do you ever notice that? You don't have a
I
show
know.
title.
I noticed that. I know we got, well, we have a different topic every show, but we don't have an official. I just call it the collaboration between Premium Prego and infamous DJ Squid, aka Greg Doss. That's how I see
Yeah.
it. But it's good to see you. Before we get into it, how you been doing? Uh-oh, you muted. That auto mute's a killer.
I don't know why. Okay, yeah. No, I've been okay. I've been taking it easy. We did launch this week. I see that it's a little rusty, but we're getting it going. I think once I get a chance to sit down and I'm going to do pre-recording and just launch them. So I'm going to actually be probably doing more than a couple. So just check it out. I've had some conversations with some politicians, so I'm able to get them in, and some people who work in other industries to come on the show and kind of share their knowledge. I'm going to try to sit down with my pops and let him give people some background as to what he experienced with throughout his lifetime. I've been blessed to have him around for 80. Well, I've had him for 58 years, but he's 86 years old, so it's been a blessing to have him around. And some of the stories that he shared with me, I think people need to understand that a lot of things were not that long ago, Maestro. Yeah, we act like a lot of stuff is ancient history, and I think having somebody who you can see, who can speak to what they've experienced, and I've been blessed to have him be coherent. He still reads, still does his studying, still does a whole lot of things. Still plays dominoes with my brother every day. Still reads his. I don't know if he still does his crosswords. I know he used to, but he does read every day. So that's one of those good things. I guess it's for brain strength, and it's nice to have an exceedingly educated person in your immediate circle. Actually, I'm the least formally. I say it all the time. I'm by far the least formally educated person in my immediate circle. And it's actually now even including my children, because I have a daughter, like I said, who's a doctor, and a son who's getting ready to head into grad school. So there's
I think the mic went out again, but this time it's not the mute. I think it may be on the computer side. And this is one of those things, folks, that y'all know. Technology. It happens. It's still muted. That now it's muted in the app, but it might be fixed on your computer side.
there you
Okay, there
go.
you go.
So the browser lost connection with the app. I don't even know what that even means. So
But you were saying the whole aspect of your
oh
family.
no, just having people, my father, having people around you who are. There's one thing to have knowledge. There's lived knowledge, and then there's credential knowledge through academia, and it's nice when the worlds can collide. And I'll just do an episode about what I learned from my father. Being in Air Force E9 and being the wielder of 4 or 5 degrees, and the things that it took for him to get there during the time that he went through it. I think I think people will find it interesting. It kind of gives some background. And having a brother who's a doctor who I argue with a lot. And actually, if people get a chance, go to Thursday's episode of Urban Views Morning Show to the 7 minute and 42 mark, and you'll hear me discussing who's responsible for how informed people are. A lot of people want to have messaging that sounds really good, but my brother, he's an esteemed professor, tenured at the largest HBCU in America, and he talks about messaging, and I'm like, well, people walk around with these things right here in their hands, and I have several of them. I got this one, I got this one. I don't know where my main one is. Oh, it's in my pocket.
What about your burner phone? You got that too?
It's somewhere around here. Yeah, the VA gave me one. I went by the other day and the VA gave us all burner phone. Oh, right here. Glad you mentioned it. VA for veterans. Get you. I went and got a phone from the VA. So and it's good and it's on till December 2027. All phone was without charge and the without an additional charge because the charge was I gave them 8 years of my life. But the in service and it's actually a T-Mobile phone.
It's not like the like it ain't like the people was, you know, saying they used to get Walmart phones back in the day, them type of phones. That's an official.
It may be a Walmart phone, but you see the T-Mobile thingy
Yeah.
on it. So I don't, you know, and didn't cost me anything extra. 5G, internet, all that kind of all the goodies. I don't know what the phone number is, but I got it. Hey,
yeah,
I tell people it's free. It's for me, and then I have my, as you can see, the emblem on this one. This is my the one that people call. You can see me on it. So yeah. So I tell people,
you had your artwork on there as well too. I saw that you had that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, that one, Mr. Chagret Dawes pays for. Yeah. So that's the family plan. But yeah, so but everything's going well. I'm going to really sit down. I'm going to talk with him. I'm talking to my aunt, who was the first ever Black district manager for Crystals. She worked for Crystals for over 40 years, and that mother, you know, was an instructor at the Pentagon, NSA. So I have some unique background. I know you bring up and other people bring up that I don't tell people about, but I think it would be helpful for those people who might want to know a little bit more about what and how I got here. That and getting pushed around. I think I might have just been the family's rebel. You know, that geech. I'm ready to bang.
We got the Black Pro Say.
Do you want to know what it is?
Morpheus in the house.
And no, not that. I'm just a guy who wasn't going.
That's
so what
funny.
about yourself, man? And this show topic also is going to be pretty intriguing. I think it's something that people may be able to benefit from quite a bit.
And it's a follow-up from last week. So if you guys didn't watch last week's stream, and we've been doing it every Sunday now, we've been keeping consistent. So you know, we in there, but it's a follow-up from last week's stream. And before we get into it, to answer your previous question, you know, I've been in a phase of consolidation. For those of you all going back to the technology point, or to the point that you were making on how long ago wasn't so long ago. And I think a lot of that has to do with technology. And lately I've been consolidating a lot of my technical needs, you know, dumbing down or decreasing my subscription. Right now they have us on a leash. You know, we're renting everything. They don't want us owning nothing. So I had to like take a week to really say, well, what's necessary? You know, what's a nice to have? What's a I don't need? And then how can I run my business, you know, on the most efficient, not necessarily just being a minimalist, because I am in my daily life, but just the most efficient tools, because, you know, AI has replaced a lot of things. And then at the same time,
continue to replace a lot of things and people.
And it's going to continue to do that. And so what I've been doing is just getting rid of a lot of storage things that I don't need. I've had my own cloud storage now at the house. So Google Drive and Google, iCloud. Just trying to get off of the tether, man. They got us tethered to everything. So that's been my main focus, because it's like what they say: if your income or if your outgo is greater than your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. And oftentimes we try to keep up with the Joneses, and so we just keep letting things go out. We can't keep up what's coming in. So that's been my main move. Just to say we can stay focused. We talked about it. You got to consume yourself in this, and to be consuming yourself in what we doing and you know what we share with other people, it's hard to consume yourself when you're distracted by all these Netflixes and the Amazon Primes and the TV and YouTube premiums and all that stuff. You know how it go. Oh, I think your mic cut out again. Not the StreamYard, maybe your computer mic. But yeah, that's the
There we go. Am I back now?
Yeah, yeah, you good, you good. But that's the gist though. That's what I've been up to. So yeah, to your point, this is this topic of discussion for today's live stream. Before we get into it, we give our introductions and everything. I think is going to be a good follow up because I know I got parts of my story that are huge when it comes to finding facts, and you said it in your recent podcast, issue spotting, something that you were real big about teaching me about, and I've been spotting more issues at consumption.
Well, if it doesn't become a part of your daily routine or your daily emphasis, you're going to get out of it what you put into it, so long as uh, the facts align to give you whatever results you are. I tell people there's no miracle that comes through the person. I'm not a miracle worker. The facts in my cases allowed me to get the outcomes that I had. Now, is it unique that a person has had this many situations? I'm not sure. I think most of us have had some sort of traffic case. Unfortunately, a lot of black men have had some sort of criminal case. And then a lot of us have had, if you have children and you're not with the original spouse still, or what have you, you're going to probably have had a child support case. I've had that. And an automobile negligence case. So I just happen to have had that as a personal experience. And then some of the things I picked up working with the law firm for a little while. And then also the stuff that I continue to reach out to attorneys and talk to them about, which I tell people, which is why I always recommend people get an attorney. Let me say this before I get going. I'm not an attorney. I don't have a license to practice law. I do not practice law, nor do I pretend to practice law. What I've done is study the law and tell people I learn how I gather the information. So I don't give information as advice to apply to your specific case, but it's general information regarding the law and lawful principles, which, by the way, belongs to the people. So use any information obtained from me or any of my streams for educational edification only. And the reason I say that is because I want nothing that I say to be construed to be legal advice. If you feel you need legal advice, I would highly encourage you to hire a licensed and hopefully competent attorney and be legally advised. And don't forget to like and subscribe both channels, particularly. Make sure we support my man Maestro and his other platforms. And if you happen to support us here, there's perks. You got the super chat perks, which is $50, gives you a live shout out, and actually it says 10% off. But you get the dollar for dollar off of any service, and you get for $100. Yeah, we'll give you that right here if you come in live. And if you call me after you donate a super chat or whatever, I'll probably work with you. And we do know if you give it directly to me through Zelle or through Cash App, it's double whatever your donation is. So we'll make it all work for you one way or the other. So,
I almost interrupted you too because you didn't give that. You got a little lazy on the intro. Normally, you said the I. I'll be looking forward to the I.
To be construed to be legal advice. I'm still working on this, getting this whatever out of my sight. But yeah, hey,
that's what I feel like you do it every time. Like, okay, you must have got the
booger. I say be legal advice. So take these opportunities to get the information, grow from it, and we're trying to build communities and giving people an opportunity to be equally successful, and even more successful than I've ever been in the courtroom. I just have my experiences.
And shout outs to Urban Rhymes. Thank you for showing up, man. To realize your wealth.
UB.
Yeah, you have to stabilize your debt. Yeah. Yes, you do. But
I don't have it's UB. It's UB. That's his UB. UB, yeah.
Okay.
He's one of the people that chastise me about making certain things look easier than what they are.
So I'm not the only one, is what you're saying. Are you saying I'm not the only one? Is that what you're saying?
I don't I guess not. Yeah. He used to say, Greg, you're giving these people false hope. I said, I don't know about false hope.
Hey, you look too good.
Yeah, I don't know why. You look like the character Will Smith played in the someone where he's a slave with the picture with the welts on. I got the scars on my back now. And if you go look inside those dockets, you'll see I got some battle scars. I just happen to have a shirt over it. That's all. So, but they're there, and the mental anguish is there as well. So, and I don't play around with it, which is why I highly recommend you get an attorney. And we live
Yes.
in an era, and it's something I wanted to bring up. We live in an era where brazen ignorance has somehow entered into the same crawl space or airspace as credentialed information, and that's a dangerous place. Don't let social media get you hogtied listening to people who can say things, and kind of like when the preacher come in and get you hyped up. Don't let them hype you up to get your head tore off, because that can happen. And we may think we understand certain things and find out later on that it's not what we thought it was. So let me be the first one to tell you. Yeah, hallelujah. Be some some slow walking and some sad singing, messing around with these people. So
that's the truth. That's the truth. And particularly to your point, that's a big part of why we make sure that you've already said your piece, and I use your piece as a part of my piece, but I don't speak for you, you don't speak for me, and I'm not a licensed attorney as well either. I don't give advice. I'm not even a professional like Greg. He actually is a professional at this, right, when it comes to pro se litigation. But in terms of just giving our stories and sharing information, and he recently I saw on the podcast reiterated something that we talked about on a previous live stream when it comes to education versus advice. And I appreciated that because he doubled down on it, right? Because I know some people look at it as a fine line and they don't know which way to go. But there's nothing wrong with education. First and foremost, you just got to make sure you get it from the right sources. And as Greg always says, your best tools and your best sources is the docket, the record, transcripts. He's real big on that. I'm real big on that as well too. But you also have people like a Greg who can at least coach you, and you have to make the decisions yourself. You have to file yourself. You have to apply it to your own facts yourself. The key word is yourself, right? But we together as the community, we can help each other grow, become stronger, think better for ourselves, and that's something that with this channel that I'm building up, Premium Prego, I'm just trying to do the same thing and do it my own way. Greg got his thing, I have my thing, but we combine our things like Voltron and we get it, make it happen. We get it popping. So thank you, Greg, for giving me, for blessing, me with your time, because I know you busy as all hell. we both know that. You got 3 phones. What that was a song called I Got 2 Phones. And man, I got 4 phones as a veteran. I got 4 phones.
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, I do have 4. Yeah.
Like that 4th was somewhere else. But yeah, no, this is just great to be here again. And today's topic we're gonna get into is gonna be based around when the court is not always perfect. And the court can make some false claims, and when they make some false findings, right? When the findings are false, you are the one. Last week's last stream was about the burden, right? The burden relies on you. This one, we're really going more into what happens. What are the things that we did and what can be done, just based on the you looking at your own law, looking at your own state, applying your own facts. But emotion is emotion. A petition is a petition. The law is the law. You know what I'm saying? You don't need an attorney to tell you the law is the law. The law is the law. They have to follow the law. So I appreciate that. But yeah, that's what we're going to get into today. And I actually do have some videos as well. We got some good reception from our last one we did some reactions to. I haven't seen the videos this time. I actually had my assistant. Now I know Greg calls his assistant Jarvis, with Claude and everything. I got my assistant. I don't know if I call it Ultron.
I got Jarvis. I got a C Thizzle, and I got C Sizzle. So
C Sizzle and C.
It depends on which one it depends on which one I'm using, as to, because they all have their own individual names, and they kind of get jealous when I tell them, you might get him fired if you continue to work this well. So you kind of you work with them like they're real assistants, to get them promoted. So that's we're gonna get a chance to kind of see some stuff a little bit later on that it worked with for me. So I'm actually and tell everybody what's kind of interesting. You're gonna see copycats, but there's nothing better than the original. Hey, welcome to my world.
I bet you they don't make them like this anymore. Ain't that what they say? I bet you they don't make them like this anymore.
Hey, I'm looking forward to that one. Man, somebody came and stole. Your concept. I'm just here. But it was your
That's
concept.
hilarious. Hey, we have people watching, you know, and that's
But
good
that's
and
good.
bad.
That's good.
Yeah, that's I appreciate it. Whether they have good intentions or bad, we just passing out the information, right? And sometimes that information gives people ideas to create content from, you know, for their own channels. So I think that's a blessing and the beautiful thing. UB has who's responsible for bad information? Is it the messenger or the receiver for not checking? I'm gonna let you get that one.
Well, I'll tell you this right here. I always tell people we can find out anything else you want to find out. We know what's going on in somebody's life that doesn't really matter to us. So if you can find out that information, you can almost find out anything when it comes to fact checking. I'm huge on and checking your source. It's no different than what we learned when we were in school. I know you're some years younger than UB and I, but we had to cite our sources. We couldn't just say things and just run off with it. And if you did say something and run off with it, when somebody did check you, it was a hell of a, it's like a cross check in a hockey game, because you are responsible for what you put on out in the airspace. Now it's like people can say anything and nobody holds them accountable. And let me say this, and it's not legal advice, but it's something to consider. A person can lie to you on social media. The place that they can't really lie and get away with it is in a courtroom. So somebody says something to you about what's going on, say, would you be willing to go into court and raise your hand and say the same thing? Now, you know, you're not going to be able just to pull them in there, but always keep that in mind. If you go into a courtroom and you lie inside of a courtroom, you may have a unique problem.
Yeah, especially
Out
if you're
here,
representing yourself.
oh, definitely you're representing yourself.
Yeah. Now, one thing I will give a little pushback, and this is not negating what you're saying, but I've caught them lying multiple times now,
Me
and I,
too. What are you
you
talking
know,
about?
and if it wasn't for my due diligence and investigation, and the key word is investigation, because that's what they're supposed to be doing, right? They would have got away with a lie on multiple occasions if I didn't, you know, double down. And same thing with you.
Well, I've told people go to my, which one is you be the one that was the, well, actually, I don't know if the second DCA judge lied or not, but he claimed that they read everything. He said that twice to me in two different hearings, and yet we overlooked that there was no petition in one, and they read everything and watched everything. But we have a claim by an attorney from that represented State Farm Automobile Insurance Company, and I dropped names because sue me. But the reality is, it's actually on the second DCA's website. Anything that can be proven must be proven, right? But it's on their website where they came in and said Mr. Doss voluntarily signed. Well, we now know that that's not true. But in my situation, the court gave them a pass and essentially gave them a ruling, which, you know, I have my opportunity to contest it at the United States Supreme Court once everything is done and time has gone over. But I'm going to use that, and they can listen because they already know it in the upcoming lawsuit. My lawsuit is ongoing now because they did walk in and lie, and they did induce a mediation conference through a false auspice. That's my allegation, and then I'll let people figure it out. But you go right there on a Florida Second District Court of Appeals website and look up Doss versus Tucker, and you can even look up Doss versus Austin Road Basketball et al. And even Doss versus, I think is it Doss versus Department of Revenue, when you can, and all that stuff is right there. Not to mention what you can ask for me for, and I can just give you the transcripts because I paid for them. Okay. And by the way, before you get going, I want to give a shout out because we're about 30 minutes in to my, who I say is the one who stood in the paint for me each time. And her name is Taisha Scott for Scott Reporting. So let me go ahead and give her this before we get going and give everybody an opportunity to. So she's certified court reporting. She stood in the paint for me. Taisha Scott, you can call her at 954-383-4955, scott-reporting.com. And as always, treat her like an American Express card. Do not leave home without her. Scott Reporting, tell her Greg Dahl sent you.
Shout out.
Oh, don't forget, she does remote recording depositions as well.
Right, and that's key. That is key. Don't let the whole physical proximity location scenario stop you. You know,
Right.
that's big. And then for those who don't have that ability, or maybe she's busy, the responsibility is on you. They have the transcripts available. They may cost a little bit more money. You may have to go through a little bit more hoops to get them, but it's your right to get those transcripts. You have the right to do so, and it's a big deal to have them transcripts and have that record straight.
And probably call ahead, because from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, I don't know how that would work. That whether they're like, if you're in an open courtroom, you're probably going to have a transcript. But if you happen to be in the chambers when these things go on, or via Zoom, I don't leave without one. And actually, I've become so competent in doing this that the other sides have started bringing their own court reporters to try to keep Miss Scott from showing up. But let me tell you something: the appearance fee is worth it for the peace of mind that comes with knowing that no matter what happens, I'll be able to have a clean, clear record of the proceeding.
That's smart. I mean, though some people take notes, some people do other things, but you got to make sure that you have the recollection. Even if you can't afford to get it till later, okay, well then take some notes. So that way you have a better chance, you have a better opportunity of at least getting further than where you would get trying to make these guesses. Because last thing you want me doing is guessing what happened in the courtroom. At least that's how it was for me. I didn't want to be guessing. So if I couldn't get the transcripts immediately, I made sure I took really, really good notes. So that way I can, pass it to my assistant, and we can formulate our game plan. And then what I do is I fill in the gaps. I get the transcripts and fill in the gaps before I actually do my filings. That's how I work.
Make sure the transcripts are available, which is why I was at somebody. Because if you don't have them, now you say taking notes, some people think, well, I just go take a note. No, you better have, because if it has to be appealed, the only thing the appellate court is going to have is
the transcripts. Yeah,
transcripts.
Yeah, no, that's big. That's big. But so yeah, I mean, in terms of the transcripts connecting to our topic and the subject, and understanding how you have to find, you got an issue spot, as Greg says, but the aspect of proving the court that there were false findings, the findings of facts aren't true. The statements of facts that were made are not true. And that's something that's real big. And like I said, I have a couple of videos queued up. I had my assistant help me up with the videos, and I did it on purpose because I wanted to see, could I, and some people take advantage. They think that, AI is just something that just does what it's supposed to do. And that ain't true. I like that Dr. Dre came out and said that he uses AI. We talk about, one of the top producers, Dr. Dre. I mean, we all know Dr. Dre, and he basically let people know, listen, it ain't the AI is the problem, it's the creators. It's the creatives. You ain't creative enough, because the AI can mess up. It can go left, it can go right, it can go up, it can go down. But my point is that even when I was having it help me find videos that were highly relevant to our topic, I made sure I had to instruct it. I watched it the whole time to see what it was going to do and what it was doing. I had to steer it. That's the way to say it. I had to steer it in the right direction and say, you know what, find me the exact timestamp. I want the timestamp, because on YouTube, you can share something and you can get the timestamp for it. We don't have time to watch the whole video. So just give me a point where, we think that it's applicable to the situation, and then me and Greg can react to it in real time and give you all our thoughts. So that's the approach. So let me get this first one queued up. But any thoughts while I get this queued up?
No, I'm looking forward to it. Last week was the first time that I forayed into, it's called reaction video or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
so I kind of like that. Maybe one day I'll think about doing that.
Let me get this up. Okay, click this. Put this on the pause here. And let me bring it up. All right, cool. So what we have here, just to give y'all some context, right? Because I know context helps. We have a self-represented father, bringing a conflicting case, custody and child support to the court's attention. And the judge reviews the record and eventually the judge ends up vacating. Now, this was something I thought I saw before. I'm not sure if I did or not. So it was interesting that the AI chose this one, and I thought I saw this one before. But let's play it. Let me see if you guys can hear it. Let me know, Greg, if you can't hear it. Did you hear that? It was all good?
I didn't hear anything.
Nothing. Oh, you know what? I forgot. You got to be fancy with this. You got to share the audio of the whole thing. Let me stop this real quick and then redo it again. And that's a big word too for those of y'all who don't understand. Vacate. That's something that I heard Greg say a lot. So now it's like every time he says these big words, I'm saying they big words because I didn't know what they were until I started learning better, right? But it is funny how he has used words that now are becoming more muscle memory for me because I hear them in other places. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. All right, now we should be able to hear this one.
It's the default order. Well, the child
Okay, all right.
support order, so they're separate, right? Because I thought the child support was dismissed by the Pennsylvania court.
That's correct, Your Honor. So, but regarding the portions that are still retained by the Pennsylvania court, Your Honor, do you want me to prepare an order that overrules or abates or sets aside those issues? I'm not quite sure what the right terminology would be.
I think right now the best, instead of now that, and thank you for asking that question because I'm thinking it through a little bit more, because the abating would just put it on hold for now. Right now, I think that needs to be set aside because we do not know for sure if we have jurisdiction. So I think it needs to be vacated, set aside for the time being, until I can get to the bottom of whatever the Pennsylvania court is going to do.
And that would be setting aside all terms except the child support or the entire order?
I would think just everything related to the possession and access, because child support is different.
Your Honor, may I say something?
Go ahead.
The child support, though, they used the model for the standard possession order. So that
Right.
entire child support order is completely unjust and unfair, as it goes off of a standard possession order that y'all didn't have jurisdiction to create. So that child support, if anything was going to be done, which I would personally request that the court vacate in its entirety until we establish a fair establishment of what the custody is, and then create a custody or a child support that establishes based off of the actual facts of this case. What is currently sitting in an order is off of a standard possession order and was done without my presence. So there was no back and forth for me to present my side of it. It assesses a massive amount of child support and arrears to me, Your Honor, that pretends as though I didn't have custody of the children and we're moving forward with a standard possession order, and that's what existed. But when in actuality, we have a Pennsylvania order. So if we were going to create child support, it should go off of the 50-50 Pennsylvania, not off of the standard possession. And that's what currently is in that order. So while Texas might have jurisdiction with the child support, what was created on March 5th is not just or fair, Your Honor.
I'm gonna stop it there. Because there was a lot that was said, and he's representing himself.
To include March 5th and a day of greatness. It's my birthday. But when they began, I could hear the issue, just the way it was coming together, is whether or not the new court would have had jurisdiction to make any changes to a custody issue that wasn't properly before that court. And I don't know enough of all the facts, but his argument seems to be predicated on what the rule was, what the order stated that they're actually under. And like the judge said, child support is a separate issue. And if you're in Florida, listen to that. The child support issue is separate than the custody issue, but it's no custody in Florida. The time sharing issue is directly affects the child support. And those are things to keep in mind. but he seemed to have done a pretty good job. And the judge raised the issue of, I don't know if I have the jurisdiction to do anything, especially having the jurisdiction to set aside another court's order. So, and again, without knowing all the facts, like how long they may have lived in the state they lived in, did the mother bring a brand new action relative to custody in that state? There's a whole lot of nuance there, but his explanation seemed to be right on point with something that I could at least identify and recognize where the issues could be, without knowing, like I said, without knowing all the facts. I know what they're talking about, but I don't know what the facts are on paper.
Right. And that's the reason why I like taking these clips, because we don't have to speculate and know everything. You know, we're just going based off what we hear and what we see. And a lot of what I've learned in court is body language is a lot. You know, body language, demeanor, a lot of things that people may not think about or understand. And you can already see her body language. The mother ain't happy about this.
Right.
she ain't happy at all. She was looking forward to that money. But I appreciate how the father was able to articulate himself. Right. He sounded like he knew his own facts. The fact that he even said the word pretending. I don't know if you heard that, but I heard that. He said pretending, and the court and the judge she didn't blink an eye. She didn't question him. She didn't he said they pretended like this was the fact, and it wasn't. And he had to correct that. You know, and that to me is something that I think is important not to overlook, because I've had magistrates on the record, literally, if I even kind of misquoted them, they immediately corrected me, because they know that they don't want that on the record. You know, so I appreciate just looking at his case, seeing, you know, him represent himself. Obviously, the other party mother has somebody in the background, right? You know, beside her, whether or not that's a stepfather, a boyfriend, whatever the case is. But, you know, she's not happy. I'm sure the other partner is not happy either, because, you know, he looking like, damn, you know, we about to be missing out on, he's looking forward to that money type of thing.
Objection, speculation, also in mind, but something she wanted. She came there with some expectation. I'd love to be able to read the case, but she came with an expectation, and she definitely didn't seem to be leaving with what she thought she was going to get. But you know, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning about when the record if the record can prove that a finding is false. And so, and the easiest way to do it is to pull the records and figure it out. But I want to make sure I let people know that a false finding is not a ruling you disagree with. It's a statement the court's own record contradicts. So, you know, you pull the records. And so what it actually is how one written sentence can travel through an entire case, you know, how to document a contradiction with page and line discipline, which you read mine, you know, I always cite in the transcripts, and why you challenge the record itself without claiming anything about anyone's intention, which is what you say what she's looking for. No, we're just going to use the facts, because otherwise you'll say it was speculation. But what she says is what she says, and also whatever's in her petition, motion, or what have you, is typically what you can hold her to. And he said she pretended. And let me say also, everything I'm saying is also for general education for self-represented people. Nothing applies to any specific case. But one word I've been known to use is misrepresented, because there's an intentional misrepresentation of a material fact, and there's things called the deliberate omission of a material fact. And now, because she's not a lawyer, it may be a little bit different, because the court may give her some lever. Oh, I shouldn't say that just about them, because I'll leave that part alone. I'm about to say, wait a minute. I definitely
say that for me. Say that for me. I know you try to protect.
I see it. Well, I can say this unequivocally. Attorneys have come into courtrooms with me and deliberately misrepresented facts to the court, and the court made rulings based upon those deliberate misrepresentations. And the courts have made rulings in my cases, and you know, somebody wants me to break it down. In a couple of my cases, I can just actually, most of the people who follow me already know, because you've seen the documents already, where stipulation of the parties was misquoted or quoted as a mediation settlement agreement, and we know under Florida law, those are two entirely different things, but that's a different issue. So, but just keeping to the, if I were to argue later on, it would be if somebody says something, well, Your Honor, there's a mediation settlement agreement, I couldn't necessarily argue or relitigate a case that's already been determined. I could just state, you know, for the record, there's a stipulation of the party, and probably use that somewhere else. So these are just things that people need to know. And again, keep in mind, nothing I say is legal advice. I can give you the specifics of my case, but I can't give you how it would apply to whatever your situation may or may not be. I can just give you generalities, and I make sure I stay in that lane for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, and that's understandable. Well, y'all, I ain't Greg, so I ain't staying in that lane. I'm gonna speculate my damn ass off, because that's the whole purpose of a reaction video. If reaction videos were not speculation, I don't know what the hell they are, because that's what all we doing. We don't know everything about everything, but I can tell you right now, the thing I've had to learn is inference, the cumulative record. And what I've learned and how I've been beating them up is I've been collecting information that they cannot allow one time, a single event, because that's oftentimes what they want to do. And I accumulate the record. I don't go based off of, well, Your Honor, I believe based on this one time. No, I point this time, that time, the next time, all the times. I point as many times as I can, because over time, there's only so much that they're allowed to walk back, you know, in terms of what was said, what was done, what wasn't done, especially when you are stating the facts and you're upholding those facts with legal arguments. That's the way that I've come across. And I've had these arguments with ChatGPT, Claude, all of them, all the time, every time that they want to correct me because they assume I'm basing my inference, right? The inference I'm inferring based on. It doesn't work. Like, you don't have to have proof all the time. That's one thing ChatGPT is very, very cautious about. I'm not sure if Claude is as much anymore, because I don't use Claude as much anymore, but ChatGPT is trained to argue with you if you haven't proven. And I'm like, what do you mean haven't? So you telling me they have to admit that they've, you know, did something wrong to me for me to be able to have an inference to infer based on the accumulation of the record that they did something wrong? Do you think they're going to admit that to me, ChatGPT? And then it goes, no, you're right. And it usually concedes after I go back and forth with it, showing it all the facts and saying, this is my conclusion. Now, one can call that speculation, but that's only gonna get you so far if somebody keeps stabbing me with a knife and I'm pointing to this person, even though they keep putting the knife behind their back. And I'm saying, look, man, it's only one person that direction. I'm getting stabbed in one direction. Are y'all gonna tell me because you don't see the knife that I ain't being stabbed? That's something that I've had to learn, you know, over time, if that makes any sense. And I'm just giving my layman's terms version of it.
Okay. Well, your case facts are your case facts. What's going on at Renee Molina, 6545?
Gratitude. Thank you. Gratitude for you being here. I appreciate that. And to your other word, yeah, rebuttal the presumption. That's what we talked about that. Last stream, we talked about presuming. And you know, here's something that I think y'all appreciate, because y'all think that me and Greg always have everything planned out, and we don't. He'll say something I don't agree with, or I'll say something he don't agree with, and then we have civil discourse. That's the beauty about us collaborating. But then there's so many things that I agree with that Greg says and does, because he knows what he's doing for his case, you know, and for his situations. And so I think if you can have a 10 to 20% objective, you know, thought process, that's healthy. That's a healthy way of growing and learning, because from where I'm from, if you agree with everything everybody say, you an ass kisser. I can't speak for Greg, but where I'm from, like, you kissing ass. Like, I don't kiss nobody's ass, but I do give respect, you know, especially to my veterans out there. Shout out to y'all. But, you know, I do give respect and everything like that. So I'm okay with, you know, being, you know, I guess we got to play good cop, bad cop. And Greg is the good cop. I'm going to be the bad cop, because I don't believe the system is right where it is. I think some changes need to be made. And I don't believe that the courts always have your best interests. I believe that Greg has done so much, and he has battled. He has them Killmonger scars, but yet he's also been attacked so many times from getting those scars that he has to protect himself even extra, because everybody's looking to attack him all the time. And I love that, because we need a Greg. But where Maestro comes in on that Kanye West-ish, listen, I don't give a damn. Like, I'm going to fight. I'm not going to always be right, but I'm always going to use legal arguments, statements of facts. And when I'm wrong, and I can be wrong. I have been wrong. I will be wrong. I'll go back, look what I did wrong, and I'll correct my record. My record is the key word. Getting them to correct the record, that's a whole different ballgame, y'all. Greg has taught me getting them to correct the record. That's a whole different thing. Let me get ready for this next. But what are your thoughts while I queue up this next one, though?
Well, everybody's case is going to have its own set of facts. No two cases will be alike if for no other reason than two different cases. I'll just say that.
Ain't that the truth, man? Mama say, Mama sama napupa. All right, we got another child support one here, and then we're gonna get into an insurance one real quick.
Yeah. Okay.
Look, y'all, this is real complicated. You didn't make it complicated.
But before I start this one, you know this judge from Texas? You know that he's an infamous one down there.
I think
I've
seen this guy before. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Webster. The name couldn't be more appropriate.
Not your fault. I didn't make it complicated. It's not my fault. The AG's office didn't make it complicated. It's not their fault. All right. There's a bad court order in this case from 2019 that needs to get fixed. And I'm going to fix that today. I wish I had the right to go back in time and fix it, because this child, Matthew, deserves support all the time. But I can't fix court orders back in time. I have to just fix them and keep moving. Okay. The law doesn't allow me to go back in time and fix it. Okay. So I'm going to fix what I can. And that's what I'm going to do today. Of course, going to find the court has jurisdiction, the testimony of the parties, and all of the exhibits that have been admitted into evidence, as well as the prior court orders in this case. I'm going to find that as of her birth date in the year 2020, child support terminated. She was not fully enrolled in a accredited high school education program that allowed for child support to continue past her 18th birthday. Homeschools generally are not accredited. It takes special type of licensing to get accredited.
Why?
Ms. Smith, don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me, Ms. Smith. Okay. I know what the law is in regards to this issue. And unfortunately, homeschooling is not considered an accredited high school diploma. So the child support is going to terminate as of October of 2020. The judgment will be granted as of the end of that month, and I'll find that Mr. Smith was behind in his child support the amount of $1,710.34, behind in his medical support the amount of $25. Effective November the 1st of 2020, child support terminated based on the court order from 2019. That's how it was written. That's how it has to be interpreted. There's no room for me to maneuver within that court order to start Mr. Smith's child support for the last 2 years. I don't have the ability to do it, but I can start it up now. And I am going to start it up now. Starting October the 1st of 2022, Mr. Smith is ordered to pay Crystal Smith the amount of $765 a month in child support. I'll order Ms. Smith to maintain the health insurance that she has on the child, and he will be ordered to pay an additional $150 a month in cash medical. Mr. Smith will pay back the judgment that he owes for child support by paying an additional, let's say $30 a month on the child support, and we'll say $5 a month on the medical support for those amounts. Those will also begin October the 1st of 2022. Mr. Smith will be responsible for court costs, but I'll give him until May 31st of 2023 to pay my court costs. Ms. Leonard, did the state hear all the terms and conditions of my court order?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Smith, Mr. Smith, Ms. Hill Leonard's office is going to prepare a court order for me.
Hey, pause
It
that.
matches
Pause
what I
that.
said here today.
I know I'm not going. Is that lady wearing a bonnet? Or is there something, or is that something behind her
No.
head?
No, I think that's her hair. I think that's her hair. You know, her hair. I think so. Does it look like it?
Can somebody else tell me that they don't think they see a bonnet or something on her head?
I think she has a I forgot what it's called,
so
but just holding her hair.
Oh, because she just have a lot of hair. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's just a lot of hair.
Oh, that's her hair. Okay. Okay. I need to get my eyes set. I'm like, I kept looking at it. I said, wow, that looks weird. But, but I can see the outline of the hair. I just can't. Man, okay. Hey, Jesus wept. What do you want me to do?
No, but to your point though, I've seen and I was gonna make the point anyway that just the going back to the
Her
appropriate.
headset. Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
Oh,
the head. That's why I said it was the thing. Yeah, but just the whole point of wearing appropriate attire to court. I've watched so many cases where, I've seen people come to court just in anything. To your point, they are wearing bonnets, they are wearing t-shirts, they are wearing tees. They're braiding their hair, they're doing just this crazy stuff, and I'm just like, no, y'all, you can't be. That upsets me. I'm trying to be on your side as a pro se litigant, and you making me mad because I'm like, man, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm still getting the shaft. You know what I'm saying? And you got people coming to court, and I'm like, I understand why these judges get pissed off sometimes. And I don't want to be side with the judges. I honestly don't. I want to be biased, but there's sometimes I'm like, I can't even be biased this time. They just making it hard. They just making it hard for them. So it's funny that you pointed out because the attire stuff matters. They watch you, they look at you, they judge you, outside of what we're talking about now. But to this point though, in this situation, this was very much relatable. I know, well, obviously, just the whole child support scenario that you faced, and you had to get vacated. But even in my situation, personally, the finding of facts in my child support case, and this is something I had to catch them, and this is why issue spotting cannot be said enough, in terms of what Greg says and what I'm following up with, because in my child support case, the mother and the court allowed it. They said that my child, who's only 4 years old right now, somehow she was in both childcare and preschool. She's in both on my child support, it says childcare / preschool. That is literally trying to have your cake and eat it too. Now, why would I say that? Because what I had to learn from the technical term, I already knew this as a common sense, denominator. But what I had to learn from a technical term is that a pre-K is compulsory school, aka traditional school, right? And traditional school is typically free. So they can't be getting child support off of the schooling. Yes, they can get it off of the supplies, after school activities, but trying to base it off of the school itself, that was something that I appealed on. And moving forward on the record, I'm correcting the record because it was a fact that was not founded correctly for them to say my child was in both childcare and preschool, and I had to find out that her childcare has a preschool program, right? But that's not the same thing as actually going to traditional school. So I thought this was interesting because they will use anything they can, and they will mix up the words, and they will call it a fact. I thought that was interesting. But what are your thoughts, though?
well, the facts. Well, I want to say this because I want to make sure that we're clear with what we're seeing here. And when I say like a false finding is like a written statement that was contradicted by the court's own record. And the judge said something and then he came back with a ruling. So I don't know the rest of what was there, but I wanted to define a couple of things just based on what he said. Like a false finding is a written statement in an order of judgment that is directly contradicted by documents, orders, transcripts, or other evidence already in the court's own record. Hence, when you brought up my case, their argument for jurisdiction was contradicted by the fact that in their own record, there's no petition. So that was a procedural defect. So I'm going to give it to you again. Directly contradicted by something that's already in or something that should be in the record that's not in the record. And those two phrases in and of themselves would carry all the weight. And but here's what a false finding is not. It's not a ruling you disagree with. Courts rule against people every day on evidence that could go either way. Losing ain't proof that you of anything other than that you lost. If the record could support the finding, you don't necessarily have a false finding. You have an adverse one. Because for how long did I have adverse findings? I might have called it false, but they ruled adversely to me. 2, a false finding is not a finding you can contradict with things outside the record. Your recollection is not the record. A conversation in the hallway ain't the record. UB had brought this up. A document you never filed is not the record. If your proof never made it into the file, the finding may be wrong in life, but you can't show it in the file. That's a different problem, and it's a different day. And third, a false finding is not an opinion you find unfair. A finding of fact says something happened or did not happen, and that can be checked against paper. Opinions and conclusions get challenged differently, and that is a topic for a different show. But whatever it is, take the sentence, take the file, put them side by side. Does a page in that file before the finding was written say opposite of the sentence? And again, this is part of the process that I think people get, I don't want to say lazy, but unfortunately, I think a lot of this happens because of people on it like us, but maybe people who may not have the same intentions for people. They give out misleading information. I don't know if they do it intentionally or not intentionally, but some of this stuff is so fact specific and so procedurally specific that if you miss, you're going to be so far off, and you're going to may not even be off within the element of what we might call the truth, but you may be off legally, and not that that's legal advice. Again, I always suggest you get an attorney, but these are things to keep in context. And by the way, when you when we're having your discussion with yourself, if you do have a page in that file and it was filed before whatever the finding was written, and it says the opposite, you have to know what you're actually holding on to, and knowing how to handle it is also could be something different. Are you in the appellate part? Are you in the reconsideration part? And at the end of the day, if you say that they did something wrong, where's your proof? And I ain't Greg being tough. I'm just saying these are things that you have to consider. UB plays chess a lot, and he makes references of chess. And people say, they're playing 3-dimensional chess, and they give some people credit for playing 3-dimensional chess, and they couldn't even play 3-dimensional themselves. But anyway, I always play chess with myself. I always expect to beat me. And that's the way I go in part of preparation. So, but the one thing I always want to walk into a courtroom with is my proof. It's not so much what I think, it's what I would like to be able to prove, and be able to prove that can get me closer to whatever end result I'm looking for, to what end I'm looking for. So the bottom line is, whatever your answer is, try to make your answer narrow, 1 or 2 sentences, and move forward with that. And always, like I say, always stand firm in what you're doing, but be able to back it up with something that's substantive.
What Juvenile say? Back that ass up.
Damn.
You gotta be able to back it up. But you just answered the prompt, the question, what makes a finding objectively false instead of just merely unfavorable. So I'm glad that you use your Jedi mind powers to be able to help with that, because that's something that a lot of people don't understand, a lot of people don't know. And as an example, the side-by-side example that you gave, I would say in my case, and I like that you mentioned, basically playing chess against yourself. And I'm a chess player as well too. Probably not like you be, but I play a little chess every now and then. And there was something that for me, I had to be able to hold side by side, because there's a term called corroborating evidence, and there's times where that corroboration, that adds more weight to your overall claim, whatever it is that you're doing. And sometimes we forget that. So for my situation, we talked about last week, I shared it, that I'm in the appellate procedure right now, and the court had presumed to stay, right? And they presumed to stay, saying basically they couldn't move forward on an enforcement because I was in the appeals. And nobody ever granted that at all. They just presumed it, right? And so I had to correct it. Or get them to correct it. But they never admitted to their error, at least not yet. And there was something that I had to have a conversation back with my AI assistant, because that's why I love using AI. I keep, sharing with you all. That's if you're not going to, even though Greg always suggests hire a lawyer. It's better for you to hire a counsel. But if you can't afford it, well, your next best step is to use these tools at your disposal, right? $20 a month is not that bad in comparison to $400 an hour. If you can't afford the $400 an hour, that's what I would do. But when it came to my corroborating evidence, the issue that I had with the court, that I have with the court, is I had a hearing on August 4th to hold mother accountable for this enforcement case, right? That the court said that they could not move forward on. But because I investigated, they ended up giving me a hearing on August 4th of this year. And that hearing, it was supposed to be a pretrial, but it ended up turning to an arraignment. Now, why is that important? And I'm going to land my plane here. It's because at the arraignment, they told mother that they would appoint an attorney for her. They turned it into an arraignment because they didn't know that counsel was not with mother. They thought this attorney that mother had for our custody case was still that attorney. They thought I was stupid or boo-boo the fool because they were sending out notices to this attorney so that way they can make it seem, at least that's my inference, right? Based on the record. Now, the problem that I'm going to have at this upcoming trial, August 5th, that Greg helped me, said narrow down. He helped me narrow down my arguments. And that was the reason why I was able to obtain a trial August 5th that contradicts the record of them saying, well, they couldn't move forward on the appeals. And my appellate procedure is not complete yet. It's coming any day now. So I can't wait to be in Greg's shoes when I finally say, y'all can go to my docket record and point out. I can't wait to be in that position. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but I can't wait to say that because it will share with you all that I'm also transparent as well, too. Well, if mother's attorney, previous attorney, shows up on August 5th, they done contradicted themselves multiple times. Because why would you say she can get a public attorney? You arraign her for that. And that's the reason why you continued instead of doing the actual trial. And then if I see mother's old attorney, August 5th, what Greg just said, I'm going to do a side-by-side. How does this make any sense? You arraigned her. You gave her 2 times to get an attorney. You noticed this attorney, but you also filed this attorney. I forgot what the term is called, but basically that she didn't have the attorney. That's the way that you sent out the original notices. Then all of a sudden an attorney shows up. That's not a public attorney. So that's if this happens, I'm going to look at that side by side.
Her attorney filed. Is there a notice of appearance?
No. The attorney never withdrew. That was the trick.
Oh.
We remember how we talked about tricks. That was the trick that got played. Her attorney never withdrew, but yet her attorney never showed up this year to the 2 hearings that we did have.
So she never
withdrew.
She did have a private attorney at one time.
She did, okay. And that attorney never withdrew. The attorney is still on the docket. I just got the updated docket. So thank you again for always making sure you reiterate that. I got the updated docket. The attorney is still on the docket, but yet they told her she can get a public attorney. That's a contradiction. Like right there, and they try to make it seem like they found facts that, mother's attorney, they didn't know mother's attorney wasn't her attorney, but yet the attorney is still on the docket. Just giving an example of that side-by-side comparison that you have to do because they're not going to correct it for you, as far as I know. Yeah, I know. And
I've never dealt with a private attorney well, I haven't dealt with a private attorney in any of the more recent cases, especially since I became knowledgeable. Every attorney I've ever dealt with, well, in support cases, in family law cases, I've dealt with attorneys and private attorneys in the it's interesting. I shall speak attorney if you take foreclosure cases. I don't know what state he's in, but I definitely have my. I forgot about those kind of cases too, huh? You should have reminded me. I forgot about the housing foreclosure cases too. In fact, one of those is actually, I think, published, and it gave, which is interesting. There was a ruling about it being a stranger to an action that the same DCA didn't apply in the case involving the Tuckers, saying the person was a stranger to the case, so the court had to rescind it. The court has no jurisdiction over a person who's a stranger to the case. And in my case with the Tuckers, neither State Farm, Dr. Shim Spine, the VA, or Austin Road Basketball were parties to the proceeding. I mean, the original negligence case, it was only the Tuckers, but the court ordered the release of parties which the court had no jurisdiction over. But you say the attorneys refuse to take foreclosure cases. What state is that? Is that iShow speed edits? I guess they're coming through yours. I'm really interested to know what state they don't take the foreclosure cases. And again, even foreclosure law is a different state to state. So just know what the rules are in your state. But the bigger issue is when the record is contradicted, or there's a contradiction in the record, and that's sticking to understanding what's in there, or defining contradicts what's in the record, I should say. This is why paying attention to the detail matters, and why you say you have to immerse yourself in this stuff. So as we wait for him to do you know where that guy's from?
No, I mean, shout out. I appreciate the engagement, but no, I know I Show Speed, the YouTuber, the influencer, but I don't know I Show Speed edits unofficial. I'm assuming he edits I Show Speed stuff unofficially.
Yeah. So,
but that's the main thing. Like you said, like how should a self-representative person, present a contradiction clearly? Because I was just giving an example of my own story, right? Of how I'm going to present it clearly to the courts without having to yell, scream, get angry at them, but just say, okay, this is the docket. How can this say this and this be that? How can it be a cow and a duck? How can it be up and be down? How can it be left and be right? How can you be hot and be cold? That's the thing that I think that, how do they present that clearly?
I know that's rhetorical, but
if you can say it educationally, or as T.I. would say, expeditiously. How did you do it? That's a better question. How did you present your contradictions clearly? Because clearly they contradicted many times from your story on themselves on the record.
Which case? Talking about the one that was vacated?
We can start there. That could be one.
On the one that was vacated, I just pulled the record.
It was that simple, huh? You just pulled the record.
Yeah, and then I also learned to narrow the argument about, because the 120 day rule was there. Failure to serve, all the stuff that people can hear if you go and listen to Denton and myself. But when it came down to it, the bottom line was, I said, okay, well, screw all that. I didn't even bring up claim preclusion or any other issue because of some background between myself and the mother. Once I said there's no petition, hey, I just nipped this in the bud. There's no petition. No case can start without a petition. The court can't have jurisdiction without that. Bam. That was it.
Now the way he says "bam," y'all, he making it seem easy, like this is a Flintstone. I know he's looking at Fred Flintstone in the flesh. He's the futuristic Jetsons man. Bam, bam, bam. But it ain't as easy as bam. Greg put a lot of work in this.
Right, I put a lot of work in it because I had to learn how to find out what the issue actually was. But once I found out what the issue was, I just honed in on the issue. I did articulate where the issue was, why the court could, why I deconstructed the situation and brought it back to square one, and could show that in square one, the what's it called, the cornerstone was not there. So I just pulled out the corner. When I pulled out the cornerstone, what happened to the rest of the structure? It collapsed.
Right. That reminds me of Jenga. You remember that game called Jenga?
Yeah, it's Jenga. Yeah. You find that one that's going to make everybody tries to pull out the one to keep it up, but at some point there's one that you're going to pull. It's going to make it fall down.
Right. That's very important. I think that's something that people need to understand and need to hear, because you have a lot of cases. I know you can't currently talk about the ones pending, but in terms of your past ones, I mean, you have everything. You have an example in many different categories that you can share. An example, for folks based on your own knowledge, your own facts, your own experience. And that right there, I think, is an education in itself. Is how do I say it? You can't replace that. You can't make it up. You can't replace it. It's something that I think that a lot of people take for granted, and that's why I'm glad that you even do share your message. But I mean, the fact that you have everything from civil, you know, you have insurance, you have, I mean, family court, you got the gamut, you know, of ways that you had to prove contradictions, because there are many times where they like to, you know, make these statements, or it's not even always statements. They'll put something on the record, you know, and the record, I think that sometimes we use that very, and how do we say, ambiguously? Is that even a word? But loosely, I'll say loosely, because, you know, the record is a combination of things, right? It's not just one thing. And I think that oftentimes when I hear people having conversations, they think the record is just the docket. Or if they don't know what the docket is, they think the record is just the transcripts. Or if they don't know what the transcripts is, they think the record is, you know what I'm saying? So I was gonna say, it's like the record is a combination of things that you have to pull together. And the fact that you now have AI, and there was a time where you did not have AI. You had to do all this stuff manually with the elbow grease. But now that you have Jarvis, you have, what you call him, she Sneezy? What was the other one called? I'm messing up.
C Sizzle and T Thizzle.
And T Fizzle, not T Pain.
Yeah. Oh no, G Thizzle, C Sizzle.
Okay. See, I keep mine simple.
But you know, I also pay for it. Now I don't have the one from Westlaw because that's just the research. But I'm glad you mentioned it. And since UB is here, I got to make sure I'm careful because he's a jackass with me. He's gonna tell me, Greg, you can't be telling him this. And he just said because he's the first one to say, you know, nobody understands how much you study. I said, I don't know why they would think I don't think that I would. Plus, we know me and UB were both older people. I didn't have AI until you came along. So I was, you know, doing it the old-fashioned way. You know, UB and I read newspaper. In fact, if you hear me, and he can attest to it, remember UB when Judge McGrady came in, he said I had to read it, but I had everything set aside for Judge McGrady in my accordion folder because I said I had to feel the paper, I had to see the paper. So I was doing the typing and the printing, and that's how I learned. But you did say the one thing you can get all my cases that are on record, you can get from my Dropbox for the most part. The case with Judge Conrad, the driving out license cases, and you talk about the record, within those cases, most of the time was about suppressing it, not getting to what the suspended license, it was the stop more so than anything, whether there was, you know, you can get the rest of it out of there. I don't want to give too much here. Go and look it up. But and it's not, less of my arguments were about trying to quote unquote beat a system. It was to make the system operate within its own guidelines, its own parameters. And you know, having my license suspended for what we now know is a void order, or orders that were the effect of a procedural defect, is what I was fighting against. And so I don't get here if I wasn't willing to fight on principle. And I only fight on principle because that's what people before me did. They stood up on principle. I don't recommend anybody be reckless or careless. I just don't. I don't recommend everybody else put yourself in a situation that could be harmful. I would rather not be in these situations. I'd rather them just leave me alone, do what the law requires. You know, I didn't say do what was right. Do what the law requires and let me go my merry way. So yeah, you can get me in there with Judge Conrad, Judge Farr, Judge O'Neill, Judge McGrady, plenty of child support hearings, probably more than you could. In fact, the interesting thing about that is, and I believe UV said they don't take the time, maybe him or somebody else, you can actually watch the evolution. You can watch Greg's evolution from being a person who just came into information, like when UB and I met, we were a part of that information I want to mention, but don't forget, people, I'm going to bring Will Crowley on to discuss. Will Crowley is, for people who don't know, who may want to thank Greg, you may want to thank Will first, because Will being honest and transparent with me about what he went through in his ordeal is why I started saying, okay, let me just show it wherever I am in the process, I show it to people. And just like, let me say this also, the Supreme Court will be reading my writ on the, it's been distributed to all 9 justices. So they're going to, I believe, read it on the September 28th, and I'll have some sort of decision by October the 5th or 6th or something like that. But even if they deny cert, even if they deny cert, then I know I can bring the action back in federal and state court because they just told the issues. But my point is, it has been a walk. And to UB's credit, I don't actually try to make things seem easy because it hasn't been easy for me. It's not easy at all. For the longest, I didn't have gray hair. This puts gray hair on you like you were any other student anywhere else, because I also don't have the benefit of a tutor, so to speak. You can call attorneys and get consultations, but I would get a lot more had I been in the classroom and could get the insight that comes from learning from credentialed professionals. Which goes back to our earlier statement about getting people on YouTube that have never done anything in their life but yell, scream, and shout. Oddly enough, some of those people are falling off now, but sometimes they should be careful about the judges. Hey, see that? See what you put, man? Those paper package boys say we can file for the judge's bond and the hokey pokey and win. Man, I've heard some of the craziest stuff. And if anybody else out here is watching it, a lot of that sales stuff sounds intriguing and sounds winnable. I'll just tell anybody, and I'm not here to argue with it, that it doesn't work. Just show me where it does.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do that because it's just not the way I do things. I try to follow the rules to get to whatever appropriate resolution I can get to. Like I said, if I want excitement, I can go to Busch Gardens. You know what I'm saying? I can go to Disney World, go to a Bucks game.
Right. But you do have to, we have to, going back to that consumption part, you got to consume yourself in this. We have to consume ourselves in this. And there are times where you'll learn that even though you don't want to be in the position and be in the situation, that it is exciting to have a win or a victory. I never wanted to be in this litigation stuff ever, not one time. But just recently, going back to, the help that I received from Greg, just that whole narrowing the argument down. And because I narrowed my argument down, I was able to receive a trial. Now, to the average person, that's not a big deal because you think that, well, we're all supposed to get it. Man, that's why you got to know your case, know your facts, because there's nothing Greg can tell me more about my case than me, right? There's no facts that he can get. There's nothing he can, no information, no nothing. And even he is sometimes floored away when I have to keep reminding him, yeah, brother, like they doing this. This is happy. Like they doing that for real. They doing that. It reminds me of, I forgot that movie with Chris Tucker and Faison Love, and Chris Tucker was in jail. He was with Faison. He was like, they doing that for you? They doing that to you for real? Till they touch you like this? They really did that to you? I'm like, yeah, Greg, they really doing that to me. He's like, I can't believe, all right, well, and I'm like, man, I can't believe it either. So just going back to that whole aspect of being able to have the record, have your record straight, right? Not just the record, but have your record straight. Make sure you have, have your stuff put together. I think is the best thing that we can do, because even a lawyer needs that. Even if you decide to go and hire counsel, they need to have that. What you don't tell them can be used against them when they're trying to represent you, and I think it's important that we have to make sure that we set our lawyers up for success. If we're going to hire an attorney, we want to set our people up for success so they can do their job, their profession the correct way. And if we don't have a lawyer, like Greg says, we have to put that hat on. And I think that that's one of the things that, going to the question above, what should a court do when its own records, conflicts itself? That's why I gave an example before in terms of like the setup. Right now, I'm in the setup, and I think UB said it earlier about the flag on the play, right? Listen, Greg has already mentioned it in the beginning about this is a process. It takes a long time, and it's done that way, in my opinion, by design. It's called the war of attrition, not the war of quick resolution, right? If it was the war of quick resolution, it'd be a lot less money in the institution. So you have to allow this time to go by, and if that time is going to go by, even if you're working a 9 to 5, you still want to keep going back and collecting those pieces of information that can help set you up for success, because there are many flags on the play. like UB said. And for me, one of those flags is a big part of that contradiction, and I'm going to have them eventually. I didn't do it on my last motion, and I'm grateful that I had somebody in my corner like a Greg, because I don't have, Mr. Dosh Senior. I don't have that. I don't have the kind of support system that he has. So to have him in my support system, I narrow down my focus and then say, okay, you know what? I'll come back to this issue later in terms of having them cure the record, having them correct themselves. But he said, what is your relief? What do you want? What do you want right now? Maestro, not what do you want? Not what you want to stick it to the face. You want to put it in their face. No, Maestro. What do you want right now? Focus on that. And then later you can address that argument. But that's how I see, when it comes to correcting that record. What are your thoughts on that? Amen, UB, to you as well. Amen.
Well, one thing is everybody does have this. Anybody who's got in contact with me has the support system that I have, because whether it was my godfather who, my father, of course, my godfather who was a little bit more street, and he used to talk to me a lot. One of the reasons I got into it is because of people like him and my father, because they were always so helpful for me through a lot of other times. And so they would say, everybody can't afford the help that you can get, or they can't afford, like, the resources. All 90% of what people see me do is the product of other people's efforts as well, collective family efforts. Cousin, even my kid's mom, old lady, my mom, my dad, my brother, goofy jokers like UB, whether it's conversation. Because otherwise I could just walk away, because Greg doesn't have the same. Greg is going to take care of Greg. Greg's going to fight for Greg. But I think it would be selfish for me to not at least attempt to help people learn. Do I think there should be, they say a workman's whether it was higher, but I think I was motivated by seeing more people win than it was by some of the others. The money is, I don't know if you're going to hear me say this. If it were the money, I wouldn't be doing it. How about that? Because it's cost me a lot more money to be here than money I've made by far. But I think that if nothing else, part of my responsibility is still to be an educator. And that's what I try to be. I try to educate them, show them my path, the mistakes I've made, where I've been able to be successful. And again, it's always in recommending they get an attorney. But I understand how expensive attorneys are. I've talked with my big brother Sean about it. I've talked to Frank about it. I talked to some other people about it. We don't even know what it would have cost me right now to have had attorneys do for me what I've done for myself.
A lot. I'll tell you that right now. A lot.
So you're talking about almost seven figures, because now I'm at the United States Supreme Court. So that means every appeal, every filing in the appeal, every appearance that I would have made, no matter whether it's at state, whether it's at county, state, or federal level, because now I've been in the appellate courts and trial courts at the state level. I've had county court cases. I've actually had traffic court cases. I've had county court cases. I've had circuit court cases. I've had state appellate court cases. I've had federal middle district, which is the federal court cases, federal appeals courts cases, and now I'm in the United States Supreme Court. And
a lot of courts.
In the appellate courts multiple times, the circuit courts multiple times, county courts multiple times, and traffic court multiple times, and even the appeals court multiple times.
Yeah. You see, you can't be going through all those scenarios and cases and courts without having to somehow.
You see, hey, look at you. Say I have some monopoly money. Yeah. There's a lot of these guys are saying giving you guys monopoly money until you go out there and try it, while they watch you get your skull cracked.
Yeah, and that going to my point is you got to have something in you, because the way that you just named it as if like it was just just a listicle, just a checkbox. Today I woke up and I had to do this and I had to do that and I had to do this. Let me check this out the box, out the box. And that's not how it is. You're able to look past all these situations and look in your past and be able to say, okay, well, now I'm past that. Now I'm going through this. But just because I'm past that, don't mean that that didn't happen. It don't mean that that didn't help create who I am today. You know, and the way that you were able to say it, even though you have all your stuff in the public for people to be able to view, I still say that it's important for people to understand that you always say it, you know, it's not easy. But things do get easier as you learn more, as you do more, and as you go through it. And that's why I think that for you to even have the totem pole, you know, starting from the bottom to the top type thing, to be able to get to that top, you had to go through that bottom. You know, that bottom phase of the issues, the bottom phase of failing forward, you know, learning the hard way, as they say, sometimes being stubborn. You mentioned it before, especially you said veterans, and then you said because you know the militant background, and then you said the other people who are just have a stoic, you know, you can't always come with that. You gotta understand other aspects of it. So I think it's important. The way that you named it, anybody watching this may take it for a grain of salt. But to me, that's not a checklist that you just check off in the morning. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden you get this reward or an award. It don't happen like that. You know, I don't want anybody watching this to think that that's how simple it is, because it ain't. Because you listed a lot off. Somebody has to watch the replay of this and write down everything, or use a AI tool or whatever, or you know, turn on what they call the captions, so they can literally see the words that you just said, listing all of these different courts, these appearances, these different issues that you had. That's a lot. And it ain't easy.
No, it hasn't been easy. And he's here, so I'm counting my words, and I'm controlled, because I get told that I make it look well, he said I gave him false hope, and I'm like, wow, I don't think I gave him false hope. I just say it the way it is, and it may sound matter of fact, but there's a lot of work. And you know, everybody here who knows me can say they've seen something that most people don't see. But I sent y'all those pictures of those stacks of documents going to the U.S. Supreme Court, and that was almost like a last minute mission. The stuff that you can see, all my stuff that's held at in Hoover, and anything that's held at the Middle District, anything that you can go into Pacer and see my multiple cases. I've had about 5 or 6 cases in federal court. Though I've settled one positively, but I've had rejection in federal court. So I've done removals that got remanded that didn't get me what I wanted. But these are the things that I share with people, because I've been through it. And I don't want to see people. I don't think people have to make. I'm not a person that believes everybody has to learn the hard way. If I've already gone through the hard part and I can put it in front of you, that's what I think is my duty, to put it in front of you. Yeah, I might be Django. I might be that 1 in 10,000. But I come here riding the shoulders of other people. So I'm just trying to pay. Here you go. Here, tell UB, I'm paying it forward.
Mm-hmm. That's what we can do. That's what we're doing right now. You know, so to that point, is this what you want? I want y'all to make sure that y'all have liked, you know, while we paying it forward. Make sure you donate. You know, Greg has done a lot for the community. He's done a lot for his local community. He's doing a lot for the world, not the city, but the world. Craig, you know how it go.
With top flight security of the world, Craig. Not just the city, the world.
The world, man. So we doing good work out here. So make sure y'all hit that super chat right there. That super, not super, that super chat. Hit that up for Greg. He's put all this information here. You know, this is one of my favorite. I enjoy this collaboration, because this is not something that I'm looking to you know, benefit off of in the terms of any kind of monetary value, because I haven't done the work Greg has done. You know, he's paid his service, you know, both from the military and for his service in this litigation game. And so a lot of you all who are watching this are, you know, probably wondering or thinking, you know, well, what am I getting out of this, or what is the purpose of me being here? And I think that the biggest part that you need to learn is that we have to pass the information down to the next, you know, and I had to learn some things before I even got to meet a Greg Doss, right? Before I even met or knew who DJ Squid was, I had to understand, like, are they the same people? Oh, I'm thinking this is one of the movies and stuff, you know, the identities I'm like, okay, no, this is the same person here, you know what I'm saying? But you just got two different personalities, because you have to put yourself out of yourself sometimes. You can't go into that courtroom thinking that you're going to treat it like the streets, because they'll show you real quickly.
We is going to jail.
Right. That's my point. You know, he had to. You gotta be that person that understands that there's decorum, you know, in the scenario, especially, you know, going back to finding facts that are false, you know, and how they affect your outcome. That makes us angry. I know it makes me angry. I feel like the Hulk sometimes. Every time I see a contradiction on the record, I want to Hulk smash these mother effers, you know, but I can't go in there like that because it's going to make they're going to characterize me and mischaracterize me. And we've talked about that in a previous live stream. You know, what happens when there's mischaracterizations, and Greg has had a lot of those, you know, in his situations. Me too. You know, if they can't find the facts, they go with characterizations, right? That, you know, and they can lean on that. They leaned on it with my case. They leaned on characterizations because they had no evidence against me, and that makes me angry. So to this question here, can a false finding matter even if other factors also affected the outcome? Can a false finding matter even if other factors also affected the outcome? What are your thoughts on that?
Is that you reading it? You're reading it from somewhere?
Oh, it's at the top of the stream. Is it not showing up on yours, on your end? It's a banner.
Can a false finding matter even if the other factors? Well, a false finding matter in what sense? If it's a false finding, are you saying an improper finding? You say false, that connotation.
We can change that to improper.
Well, a lot of things. Well, it could matter because it could give grounds for it could be called reverse. There's a thing called reversible error, which you can have an abuse of discretion, or you can have trial court error. An abuse of discretion, depending on your jurisdiction, could, and this is just general information, you can look this up. I always look for trial court errors or abuses of this. Abuse of discretion may be a little bit more difficult, but trial court errors, which typically go to what you'd be called a procedural defect, or what allows reversal. I had a procedural defect, which the trial court erred in accepting. I'll just make it quick. The trial court erred in accepting certain statements as true, and procedure required them to read the petition. That didn't happen, so I was able to get some relief from that. I gotta be careful with this one because it's one of the active cases. Well, I'll tell you what, here's a false finding. In my reversal from the second DCA as to whether or not they could get sanctions, because that's still open. And we're going to still go with it. And I had to be careful because there's some bar information out there as well, based upon what I have raised. The appellate court stated that there was the record was devoid of any facts to support this a sanction or an injunction, and there was a missing bond. So what the court said, we must reverse. So those are procedural errors or procedural defects, and they said because of this we must do this, and so that's what happened within that. So a false finding, if you're saying false, is being
not true. Like it wasn't true. They said something was this and it wasn't that at all.
Now you're talking about, is it an intentional misrepresentation of a material fact or a deliberate omission of a material fact? Because that could constitute fraud on the court depending on who's the one that did it. And that's general information you can go look up as well. Again, nothing I say is legal advice. That's just generally, you're looking for misinformation or a misrepresentation. That misrepresentation is where you might want to look into and say the court made its determination based upon unsubstantiated information, then that may set you up for appeal. But again, these are all parts of the process. And again, what is the issue? Go find the rule, apply the rule to the issue to conclude that you're entitled to the relief.
And to that point too, the aspect of the improper or false.
Hold on. UB did say something. If you think it is, you could object to it because that preserves your that also not only does it preserve the fact that you raise it when it comes time to appeal, and you get your transcripts, you go to when A stated this, then petitioner stated this, the court ruled this way. Within that portion of the narrative may be your pathway toward relief. That makes sense to you?
Yeah, and there's multiple ways to object. To connect with what UB said with my thoughts on it. There's one thing if you object orally. It's another thing to object on paper. And that's one thing that I learned from you, because I know that it's not easy, especially when you're in the courtroom, and you're representing yourself. It's not easy to stand up for yourself. It's not easy to disagree, with what they're saying, whoever's saying what, and that preservation of objections. And that was a term that you had, you said often to me, like, did you preserve? And I remember we had a disagreement, because I had to understand what you were saying. You weren't trying to beat me up, even though it felt like it, but you weren't trying to beat me up. You were trying to remind me that, okay, Maestro, it's one thing, because you kept saying, did you preserve your objection? I'm like, yeah, but great, but did you preserve your objection? But I'm like, but did you preserve? And so you were telling me from an oral standpoint, when I was there in person, did I say that? Because there's one thing saying it there in person. It's not negating that if you don't say it, that you still can't move forward, in your objection. It's just, you were telling me another element, another level of stating it orally, and then being able to, file your objections from there. And that was something that I had to combine the two things.
Well, I'll say this. We have a saying within and shout out to the child sports basics groups and the barbershop talks groups. We have a basic saying: if you don't raise it, you waive it. And now, if there's a procedural defect, your failure to raise it would not waive it.
That's the key. But that's the part people will they'll get misunderstood, or they'll misalign those two parts right there, right? Because to me, that's key. I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, that was key. Because you'll be afraid. You'll say, oh, well, because I didn't say it in court, therefore the issue is over with, right? Or I don't have my way of raising the issue later. And that's why I'm glad you corrected that.
Well, my case that got vacated was I didn't raise the lack of a petition until, didn't a jackass say, why is it? He said they didn't serve you the first time, didn't serve you the second time, didn't serve you the third time. Why is it relevant today? And I said, it's because it's a void order. And he said, okay. And that was even before we knew. I went back and looked at the record again and scrutinized and said, let me go look at the petition. Oh, hell, it's missing. There's no petition. So a lot of my arguments about the failure to serve amended complaints without leave of court, without showing a good cause, all those are rules. But the which also would have gone to subject matter jurisdiction from a foreign jurisdiction, which most people don't have that issue. The easiest thing was there's no petition. 99.999% of people won't have that clear path to getting out of there, especially 31 years later.
Yeah.
And fighting at 57. Yeah.
And to UB's point, that's where the word ignored, to me, I'm gonna highlight that word, right? Because
Right.
The reason why I'm highlighting this is my opinion, this is my perspective, because Greg also has that kind of thought process. The law is, there's nothing wrong with the law, they just need to uphold it. And that's why I always say, yeah, no, there's something wrong with the law, but I know what you mean, brother. But when it comes to that word ignore, the word supposed to should be in there, because they're not supposed to, see, we don't that's what I'm saying, that there's times where I'm arguing with ChatGPT, right? And I'm arguing with this AI bot, because it's always trying to play semantics or deal with semantics. And literally, when I give Claude the answer from ChatGPT and vice versa, I have to tell ChatGPT, stop arguing semantics. That's just as training data. But I tell it, but it's not that semantics don't matter. That's why Greg is here, because he makes sure to take the things that I'm saying in layman's terms and from an educational standpoint, frame it around what the actual law is called, like what that is called, what the terminology is called, right? That we can all look it up ourselves. But me, I don't have time for that. I ain't been doing this for 20 years, 30. I don't want to be doing this for the next 20, 30 years. Like what she say? She said, ain't nobody got time for it. I don't got time for it, but I gotta do it, because if I don't do it, who gonna do it? And when I see that word ignored,
Who's gonna do it for you?
and that's my key. That's my key thing. But when I see that word ignored, I'm thinking, okay, they ignored me on my filings. I told the court 4 times in filings that there was no stay. That means they were able to proceed on my enforcement hearing, an order that they made that I disagree with, and I'm appealing it. But it doesn't mean that the other party is not supposed to follow this order. I told them 4 times in my pleadings, 4 times. They ignored me. It was only until I called the court. Literally, I called the court and I recorded this phone call. Why? Because in Ohio, it's a one-party state. I called the courts and I recorded it. Why? Because if I did not record it, they were going to be able to say, well, you didn't do that. Nope. See, I called y'all and I had you all go to the legal department, and the legal department investigated, and then somehow they found out, oh, well, there was no stay. So you're telling me that even though I filed, even though I said it when I was in the hearing, it was only when I called off the record that you guys decided to make a change? See, that's why I said the word ignored is key there, because they will ignore you. That's how, if they can keep you out of that courtroom, it makes it harder for you to be able to plead your case. And Greg always talks about, you got to get in that courtroom. Filings is one thing, but you got to get in that courtroom. And I'll be like, Greg, they not letting me in the courtroom. I filed this, I filed that, I did this, I did that. They ain't letting me in until I verbally called them on the phone, and I called them multiple times. That's when they finally made a decision to change something.
Well, here's part of that. The filing without, and I don't know Ohio. I'll tell you this: if it were Florida, and my scenario was that I needed to get a hearing date on my motion, get my motion heard. Florida has a conferral rule, so I had to confer with opposing counsel. So, and oddly, I rarely can get in contact with opposing counsel on the phone. I know if I was an attorney, I could. So I do my conferrals through email. Once you do the conferral through email, if I need to set it, in which I can go in and I can set myself, because I was kind of grandfathered into what they call JAWS, I just set it and I call it JA. And that's why it's, if depending on your state, I don't know how it works, go to your judicial website and look up whoever your judge is and find out what your judge's rules are and then his preferences. For example, my judge, I have Rogan, I think 3 or 4 judges right now, Felix. And I'm thinking in my head, and they all have different preferences. Before the introduction of AI, it wasn't necessary for me to put an AI disclaimer on. Even if I don't use AI a lot, and I use AI, well, I always use it for Westlaw in legal research. And Westlaw tells you that it's, how it generates, and you go from Westlaw to open case, and then you can go to what have you, then you go to Google Scholar. But anyway, you can find the cases. But I just put the disclaimer on all of my filings now. 5 years ago, that wasn't necessary. So it's just understanding the rules. But I've always been able to pick up the phone and call it JA. And you try to learn a relationship, or you send them an email. Send them an email, then you follow up on the email. And they typically work pretty well. I've had very few issues with JAs about getting things scheduled. But then that might just be me. Even when I was in child support, I didn't have very many issues getting some things done. And in fact, if you're a member, you can see it anyway. But if you're not a member, I recommend you go to my membership and you go to the child support basics. And I believe it's episode 3 or 4 where I show people how to set up your online presence so that you can file, well, at least in Florida, how you can set up so you can file electronically, the process of filing a document and doing whatever you need to do. It says not for legal advice, it's showing you the process. In fact, they show it to you on their website, the same thing that I was showing people how to do. That's how I learned, because I didn't have anybody who could teach me. Yeah, that's UB's famous line. What are you going to do when they break the law? It's your responsibility to call them out on their mistakes and errors, whether they are intentional or not. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, well, at the end of the day, it's your case. Even if you get an attorney, it's still your case. Ms. Vanell went to have to take care. She had a couple of things. She's had an issue with glass company, an issue with what's the mortgage? Not a mortgage. Wasn't a foreclosure. It was a squatter issue, and watching. She navigated through the process because she just learned the rules. What helped me a lot with insurance companies is my father, and then her as well. No insurance, so I had people who were within my circle, and I have the book back here that I was. Every time I told my dad, I cussed Thompson and Reuters out for sending me the bad faith book. I said, I don't need to know no bad faith for insurance. And I cussed him out real good. My dad might have paid a couple $100 for that book for me. And I'm like, but it wasn't the book I ordered. And they said, well, Mr. Dawes, we're sorry. They sent me the whatever the book was. And lo and behold, years later, here comes a bad faith claim. So I happen to have the book, haven't read it and understood it. And oddly enough, State Farm popped up in that book quite a few times. But it's having resources and knowing how to use the people around you. That's always important. If I'm talking about some other stuff, maybe me and UB can't talk on the phone. We're going to talk about some other stuff. If I was going to talk about, I got several people that I can't talk to things on the phone with. Not that they're illegal, just certain conversations I'd rather not have on the phone. But there's a time and place for everything, but no matter what the game is, you need to know the rules. There's rules in the streets. There's rules in football fields, basketball courts, baseball diamonds, tennis courts. There are rules. It's up to you to know the rules. Going back to the whole messaging thing. Whose responsibility is it to be informed? And who's to give you an excuse when the information is readily available? Hell, at this point, at least 20 some odd thousand people have no, well, actually more than that, because the blog talk, but 40 or 50,000 people who've come across me have no excuse for something because I do pick up my phone.
You do. I definitely. I'm grateful that you do, and I know others watching this are grateful that you do. And y'all don't take for granted that he does. That's why you can support this man in many ways other than just liking the video and subscribing to our channels. But monetarily, Bill still got to get paid, and the work that he does for the community and for all of us, we can't always take it and say that it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be, you gotta be. No, man, I listen, nobody's owed nothing. Ain't nobody owed a gosh darn thing. Like nobody. You ain't owed nothing. That's how I view it. Besides what God is intended to give you, outside of that, everything else on this earth, it's built off of systems, right? And it could be taken away at any point in time. We can go back to the old days, the gold, not the golden ages, but the stone ages. At any time, anything could happen. We are so entitled, and we are less grateful than we should be at times because we have been civilized, and we have tools, and we have food, and we have water and shelter and entertainment. And then, we have folks like Greg, and, when it comes to my channel and especially my tech and my business, when it comes to those things, that's what we're looking to make a contribution to the human condition, and that's how I see it. And when it comes to this topic here, the fact that the findings that the court will come up with can be improper, they can be false, whatever specific term. I'm not gonna don't quote me on that because I know Greg knows more than me on it, but to UB's point, it is your responsibility. And I just add the caveat, that's if you want the relief, because it's not your responsibility. If you don't want what you want, then you cannot complain what you get. Then you saying, listen, you giving the responsibility to them, and they would love to have the responsibility because these people don't make money. Everybody involved with this, they make money off of our litigation, off of the conflict, off of the non-resolution. You know, unless you're settling, even when you're settling, somebody's still getting paid. Somebody getting paid even when you're settling, whether it is you, the other party, the judges, the attorneys, somebody's getting paid. So I think that's important for us to understand that, you know, it's our responsibility to fix the errors. It's our responsibility to find out what is true and what's not true, what's proven, what's unproven, what's evidence, what's hearsay, you know, what's speculation, you know, all these terms. There's books out there. There's AI. There's Google. Greg cannot save you. You know what I'm saying? Like this.
Greg ain't gonna try to save you.
Jesus' time is gone. You know what I'm saying? So we got to save ourselves in this situation. And I appreciate, you know, having you, Greg. I'm not going to play the last video, so I don't want our time to go up too much. But just, you know, just reiterating and closing it, you know, bringing it to a close when it comes to, you know, being able to prove to the court that, you know, what they did or what they're doing isn't right. You know, what's your last piece of advice? I'm leaving it that way on purpose without the legal terminology. Just proving to the court what they did or what they're doing isn't right, and it's not based on the facts. What is your last educational piece that you would say folks should think about? We should think about is a better word. We should think about.
Well, I'm gonna build that within what I'm about to do again for those who may have came about a little bit later on, and because I think it's important in making the point that because not only does the whole segment depend upon it, but your situation depends on it. And I talked about citing your transcripts line by line, things that I've done in my cases, and you can't cite a transcript that don't exist. So if there's no record of a hearing, there's no page to point to, and everything we talked about today dies in that room. And that's why I shout out my young lady here, Scott Reporting LLC every time. Taisha Scott, she's AAERT certified. And by the way, court reporting done right, so that when you need the page does exist. Get it? And trust me, I've used her. Go to scott-reporting.com. That's scott-reporting.com, or call 954-383-4955. The people who come ready with a court reporter, they tend to do better when there are the issues that we discussed today. I know I never would have gotten the results I did if a Taisha Scott didn't exist, because it caused other sides to bring in court reporters. And by the way, when you call her, make sure you tell her Greg sent you. But it goes back to the same thing with me. It's a process, and it's a tedious process that one must learn when it comes to anything, when it comes to these courts, which again is why I highly recommend people hire a licensed or competent attorney. And if you don't want to hire an attorney, if you think you want to do it yourself, I still would recommend you take advantage of attorney consultations, self-help programs. I'm sure in your jurisdiction they have what do you call like free legal advice, free legal services or whatever. Take advantage of them. You know, there's a saying: you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Treat each court proceeding the same way, because you may, in your appearance, forget something that you may not get another chance to come back and preserve or save. And that's why you always, that's why I would just recommend people take this very seriously. You said it yourself. You have to immerse yourself in this and learning the rules, knowing the process. And I hope I answered your question. Knowing the rules, knowing the process, and having everything in alignment to get the results that you're looking for.
That is a huge part, the alignment. And I'm glad that we are aligned in our pursuit as well to you know, make sure that we are taking the responsibility, as UB said, I think Cersei said what she said, not to mention all his tool costs. Yeah, he has paid a lot of money for. That's why I tell people, listen, don't let Greg fool you. You know, he's on the pro plans and the $100 plans and the $200 plans, and I'm telling y'all, a lot of people that are watching this, I'm just keeping it all the way funky with you. A lot of people watching this, they ain't got that kind of bread that you spend. I mean, if you do, you're gonna have to cut back on the Netflix. You're gonna have to cut back on the YouTube. You're gonna have to cut back on some food. You're gonna have to cut back on something, because listen, them tool costs add up. So if you only got $20 in your pocket, just choose one. You know, choose one, and use that sucker to help it with your situation. And don't forget, you can train it. You know, these AI tools have memory. I know Greg sees that. Like, we've talked about that before he was even using Claude. He wasn't even thinking about the memory. I remember hitting him up about like the new features, and that was a big part that he now has embedded in his muscle memory that, you know, he shares with me, that it tells him, you know, you before you met me, you know, you was doing all by yourself and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, that's only because the AI has memory, right? And it has this feature where you can keep stacking up your past situations or your past prompts and in the responses, and that way you're not feeling like you start from scratch all the time. And that only costs you $20. Like, don't go into this thinking that you're gonna do it for free. You know what I'm saying? It only costs you 20. But I'm just for real. Like, she's right. Cersei's right. Like, he had Westlaw, Open Case, Claude, all that. I'm like, listen, most people are not about to have 200 here, 200 there, 100 here, 100 there for all this AI. But Greg got time for it. You know what I'm saying? I don't have the time for it.
Today I got time.
You know what I'm saying? But today I do got time. And when I got that dime, that $20 can get you a lot further than what you think.
I don't think it's not about so much about having the time for it. I said it before, I can't afford to half step with the entities that I've taken on. Yeah, think, look who my defendants are: the city of Tampa, state of Florida, because the city of Tampa is a police department. The state of Florida defends the judge. State Farm Automobile Insurance Company. Dr. John Shim. And one of my cases was the Department of Veterans Affairs. I can't afford to not be at the top, the best. I can't afford not to be the best I can possibly be. I might be David taking on Goliath, but I better have my slingshot, my rocks ready.
I like
So
that. That's a good metaphor. That's a good way to leave it. The slingshots and the rocks, and that includes everything. All the tools. The docket is a tool. The transcript is a tool. The AI is a tool. These are all tools, y'all. The education, the websites that the courts put online, those are tools for us. You know, it's up to us to use all these tools and do what we need to do. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate you all for viewing the channel, for viewing the live stream. I appreciate you all for, you know, sticking in with us. We've been doing this for a couple, I ain't gonna say a season. Like, we're in the first season, I guess you'll call it that. We in our first season. You know, hopefully we get a season 2.
Is it 5 or 6 of the first? This is our 6th.
Yeah, I think this is a 6. I think we had 6. We're 4 official, you know, back to back on Sundays when we started making it reoccurring. But yeah, we on about 6 or 7. It's only gonna get better. And I just want to thank, you know, everybody that's watching this, that's contributed, that will contribute. Don't forget, you can still contribute now. Just because the live stream ends, you know, you can still contribute to Greg now. His Cash App don't end. You know, his phone number don't stop ringing just because we end the call. You know, we end the live stream. It don't happen like that. So keep contributing to Greg. You know, I appreciate y'all. Anybody that's watching my channel, to go to his channel, make sure to show him some love. Anybody that's watching his channel, hey, if you know, my situation applies to you, because it doesn't apply to everybody on Greg's channel, and I understand that. My situation applies to you, and you want you know, a little bit more perspective on using these tools, because that's all I can share with you all. I just like to share with how I use these tools for my own use case, tech wise. I'm the tech guy. Maestro Stevens, hit me up. info@theiconicexpressions.com, and I'm gonna put my banner up real quick right here, or you can just go to my website, theiconicexpressions.com. You know, so if I'm telling y'all I do this, I'm letting y'all know that's the truth. And other than that, I'm gonna let Greg do his outro, do his thing, and then we gonna end it there.
Well, one thing is for sure, and I don't know what just happened to
the camera.
Oh, there you go. One thing I'll say for sure is, for everybody who happens to be watching us today, or if you're especially coming from my side, make sure you take the time to go over there. And if nothing else, like Maestro's page, get him up there so he can do his lives and do everything that he needs to do in order to put the message out, because he was a tremendous help to me over the last couple of months that I met him, and he helped amplify what I was able to do. And because I'll be honest, without the AI, I don't think the other stuff I could have done, the Supreme Court case stuff, would have been impossible to continue to do without, well, the drafting part, the research and all that other stuff I could do. The drafting, I would have probably broke my fingers, or I had some kind of bad case of carpal tunnel, just doing the raw typing, which I used to always have to do for the other cases. But I'll tell everybody, every Tuesday and Wednesday, check out the podcast, the Greg Doss the Greg Doss DJ Squid podcast is live every Tuesday and Wednesday at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I talk about court process, dockets, facts, and veteran stories from a man who's represented myself since 2011 officially. So 15 years or so worth of receipts. And I have the one rule: always try to prove me wrong. And if you've ever been here at the court docket or an order, something you couldn't read or waited on a ruling that never came, my podcast is for you. It's for all self-represented litigants and also for veterans. I have a segment called PSA for Veterans. Every fourth episode is dedicated to veterans. I'm going to do my best to bring in people who are qualified in veterans benefits and veteran services. We're going to do interviews. We're going to have other interviews on within that stream. I'm keeping it here at the Greg Doss GD YouTube channel until I can build up enough to be able to go live. I forgot you had to have so much to go live on a brand new channel. So if you get a chance, hit the link on the other channel so I can get the necessary people. But for the time being, go to my podcast. You'll see the Greg Doss DJ Squid podcast. Check out the episodes. Well, we're in our first season. I think I have like 11 or 12 episodes at least. And also within there, you're also going to hear other shows that I'm going to classify as podcasts. And I have to get it set up, but I do have my Podbean. So you can find me soon. You'll find me on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and or iHeart, not to mention YouTube podcasts and other places where your podcast services, where you listen to your podcast. I'll be bringing on Ms. Bunnell to talk about insurance and other things. I'll be bringing on Mr. Tondrick Robinson, our resident accountant, and some other people. Again, I'll be doing an interview with my father, hopefully soon, so that those who don't understand the history and how it wasn't that long ago. In fact, I might call that series, It Wasn't That Long Ago. So I have my father, I have my aunt, I have my uncles who told me some stories. Even I didn't even know my family connection, Maestro. Miss Vanilla tell you, we know my family connection to Rosewood until my uncle said something. He's like, yeah, they ran him out of some city in Florida. I said, Rosewood? Yeah, that's it. I'm like, wow. So I was 57 years old when I found that out. So there's some things that I want to talk about to help the community learn more. Again, you'll never get legal advice from me. But if you have anything you want to send to me, you can always send it to me at GD Squid Podcast. It's GDSQWYD Podcast at gmail.com. You can always text or reach out to me at 813-570-9617. Definitely can cash at me at GD Napsy. You can also Zelle me at that same number. And as always, imparting, sometimes it's not about right or wrong. More importantly, it's about clarity. You'll never reach a resolution if you're not willing to engage in honest dialogue, even if the dialogue is with yourself. Take time to hug the person you love and love the person you hug. On behalf of Greg Doss, non-attorney pro se consultant, I'm Greg Doss. I'm the infamous DJ Squid. I'm saying shout to all veterans. I'm saying peace. I'm saying chicken grease. Maestro, we're out of here.
The next episode.
And ladies, they go to Prego. Yeah. Peace. All right.